Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org, for more info, or you can email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Leonard Archie Wilson. We'll be discussing his book, Duppy Conqueror, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I will say, Leonard was brought to People of Distinction today by some of the best movers in the business. Author, Reputation Press Publishing. If you have a book that you'd like moved, well, move it to Author Reputation Press. You can find them at authorreputationpress.com. And guys, listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Leonard here on the line because his book we're discussing today, Duppy Conqueror, listen, it's a fictional narrative, okay? But it's a fictional narrative that has some religious undertones with it, okay? Now listen, he didn't start off with wanting to write a religious book or a Christian book that way, but listen, sometimes things just go the way they go, okay? And I'm so excited to have him here on the line because, listen, he's going to be able to articulate all the nuances in his book much better than I ever could. So without further ado, let's not wait any longer. Let's bring him here on the line with us. Leonard, first and foremost, thank you so much for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction. How are you?
Oh, you're so very welcome, Benji. I'm very good, thank you. I'm delighted to be on this program.
Well, listen, we're just as delighted to have you here. The honor is all ours. And, listen, we have a big show ahead of us, okay? Because, of course, this is going to be the main focus of the interview. You do have 3 other titles that we want to get into later on in the interview. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. Before we get into your book, Duppy Conqueror, tell our listening audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Jamaican-born, British raised, but have been in the United States for the last 45 years. And for my prior life to becoming an author, I was a jeweler. I was a jeweler for 49 years, 35 of which was in my own jewelry store in Bristol, Pennsylvania.
There you go. Well, listen, Leonard, let's jump right in. Duppy Conqueror. Tell us about your book.
Okay, the book is my 4th book, and the title really says it because what a Duppy is an evil, a malevolent spirit. I guess what you call here in the United States and other Western countries, the ghost. But unlike the United States, where it's mostly considered like Casper and what the holiday that we just had, it's more a real thing in the island. It's not really considered to be a superstition. It's reality. And because of that, I decided to write and show from a different perspective what these things or beings are really about. So the word Duppy may not be widely known in the States, but it is of West African origin. It was originally called Duppy, same pronunciation, but spelled D-O-P-I instead of D-U-P-P-Y. And that's why I decided to use that name in the title. Now, Duppy Conqueror, in Jamaica, there's a saying that if you're a very potent person, very powerful person, you're considered a Duppy. They call you Bullbucker and Duppy Conqueror. Now, Bullbucker is really somebody who could outbutt a bull. Jamaicans say buck, B-U-C-K, but it's butt they're saying. An individual who could outbutt a bull and scare away a Duppy. Two unlikely things. But if you were that powerful, and this was used for people who are politicians, the lady across the street who's very good at arguing, it's a very common term, very prolific term. You're a bull bucker and a Duppy Conqueror. It's almost a compliment. In this story that I wrote, there was a young child that was born in the late 40s who had and now this part is actually something that happened, who had an experience with one of these entities. I mean, and in his 70s today, he still remembers the story. It scared him so badly. And I used the story that he told me in the first chapter of the book. His name was, in the story, William. William, because if you remember your European history, William the Conqueror was a very powerful Norman duke who pretty much routed the Anglo-Saxons at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. And this child's mother was somewhat infatuated with the whole idea of this incredible knight. So she had this first child. He called him William to remind her of William the Conqueror. And in time, his name was changed. It's not his name, but his moniker. The things that people called him changed to William the Duppy Conqueror instead of William the Conqueror. And so that's why the book is called Duppy Conqueror.
Fantastic. Let's go into inspiration. Now, of course, as you know, inspiration can take many forms, so it's a multi-part question. But A, what inspired you to write this particular narrative? And of course, you've already started to go into it slightly with, you know, the story that you were told from, I think it was one of your friends, or at least somebody, an acquaintance of yours, somebody that you knew from his personal experience. Now, if there's anything more that inspired this story, please share. And then B, listen, you've written 3 other books, but you talked about you spent about 40 plus years as a jeweler. So this is not something that you did career-wise. I mean, this is something that I believe started after retirement. What inspired you to make that switch from becoming a jeweler to then becoming a writer?
So being the owner of the jewelry store and the manager, many of my customers would come in and say, Leonard, you talk like an author. Why don't you write a book? So I'm like, And then it became more prevalent that people would say this. I'm thinking, maybe I do have some author potential. And in my early youth in England, I was very, very into composition. You know, when the teacher would come in and say, I need you to write on this subject, within seconds I'd start writing and I wouldn't stop. The inspirations would just flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt that there was an innate part of me that was a writer. But when I retired, sitting in Florida doing pretty much nothing, the mind started to wander. I'm like, oh, maybe I should write. And, well, I don't want to get into the other books at this point, but that was part of the inspiration.
Fantastic.
Something that, well, I can give you the teaser. My mother passed away in 1999, and she left a manuscript that she was writing at the time about her family life and things Jamaican, things that happened in her time. which was between 1922 and 1999, which is quite a history. She went into things that she was told about her parents, and it was a very interesting manuscript. She would say, "Oh, I'm going to be a writer one day. I write this," and we'd be like, "Yeah, right, Mom." Sure. But then when I read the manuscript, I'm like, man, this is very interesting. And so that was the inspiration for the first book. And it got me off on this journey of writing. And I found it came pretty easy to me. And now when I'm not writing, I'm bouncing off this feeling. I need to write.
There you go. Listen, when you're passionate about something, you're passionate about something, right? I mean, you can't deny it. Guys, again, here on the line with Leonard Archie Wilson. We're discussing his book, Duppy Conqueror, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Leonard, I do want to leave some time to talk about your other books. So next question that I'd love to get into as we tie up this fantastic book is, listen, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting prior to embarking upon this journey?
Well, what surprised me, as I said initially, that I did not plan to write a religious book, was that as I wrote, I felt inspired to have the protagonist and his cohort certain biblical texts. And this is strewn throughout the book. There's a lot of that in there, which adds authenticity to the idea that I'm trying to pass along.
Guys, as I stated, that's not all. Okay, Duppy Conqueror was the anchor for the interview. That was really the main one that we wanted to spend the most time talking about. But he's written 3 other books. Now, he's already started to go into one. Again, as he stated, his mother left behind almost a memoir of sorts, right, that he picked up and formulated into a book. So the 3 other titles that he's written, all available on Amazon as well, is called A Jamaican Family's Saga, then A Jamaican Family Saga 2, and then lastly, Poof. Now, Leonard, you have already started to go into A Jamaican Family Saga. Now, please, if you'd like, you can go into more of a synopsis on those 2 narratives or go into a synopsis on Poof. We'd love to hear it.
Okay. Jamaican Family Saga is initially a story about my mother's family in the early 1900s and the murder that occurred in the family. Not in the family, but her younger brother disappeared at sea. And it became a mystery to the family for many decades afterwards. And what I did with the story was I pretty much detailed the facts as my mom laid it out in the initial part of the story. But as we came into my time, the early 1950s, then I brought myself and my siblings into the story, where we became intrigued by this murder mystery within the family. And as my alter ego grew up and became a grown-up person, I incorporated him into the story with his wife as people who were seeking the answer to this mystery. And that's kind of the whole, but these 2 people traveling the world, they went back to Jamaica from the States, to Cuba, all in following the line of the story, and almost solved the story, but gave up and went back home being the United States. And that's book one. Book two is a continuation. What I did with book two was elaborate on the family, went into each life a little more detail, and the couple went off again seeking what they could find out about this uncle that disappeared in the late 1940s. And there was quite a few surprises for them as they went about this search. You know, they in the story I don't want to give away the story, but it was quite surprising. And then there's the third book, which was really mysterious how it began. Shortly after I had a serious operation in 2004, I had a striking dream during the operation. And following that, I kept having these various dreams, which were very striking. And my daughter, on one of the Christmases, came to me and said, "Dad, I'm going to give you this for your Christmas present." I think it was 2008, so that you can write down your dreams. So I wrote down 50 of those dreams in a journal, and then my children said, "Dad, you should just publish this." And so I did. I published the stories of my dreams and incorporated a little mysterious cat that we adopted named Houdini. Houdini was mystical. And as you read the story, you'll find out why she was mystical and how it impacted the family. I think you'll find that Poof is probably the more widely appealing book because, you know, it could touch everybody's life.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have had pets, and most people have dreams. I think it's a roller coaster ride of events. And I've said before, it's not, I didn't want to classify it as fiction because they were real events to me. You know, these were not some thought up imaginings that I had. Each time that I dreamt, I'd wake and write. And after a while, I had a book full of these stories. So that one came most naturally.
Guys, listen, what more can be said? Okay, so many different genres in each one of these books. You know, listen, you know what you got to do. You got to head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You got to pick up your copy. Start with Duppy Conqueror by Leonard Archie Wilson. But while you're at it, pick up his 3 other titles as well. A Jamaican Family Saga, A Jamaican Family Saga 2, and then lastly, Poof. Listen, we're all feeling a lot of challenges right now, and let's call a spade a spade. We're all spending a lot more time at home. But if we can't leave the confines of our home physically, why not pick up these fantastic fictional books and leave the confines of our home mentally? Leonard, this has been an absolute pleasure and such a delight. Thank you so much for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Benji.